Today I'm going to be doing a very simple demonstration of showing you how acid rain forms. Keep in mind, in environmental science we're always concerned about nitrates being released into the air and condensing out into water vapor and falling to earth as rainfall, and of course doing damage to ecosystems. Today we're going to be actually creating a CO2 gas and showing you that same process. By doing a very simple experiment, something familiar with maybe early learner chemistry, and that is taking sodium bicarbonate or baking soda and combining that with vinegar here. Taking our packet here, cutting it open and measuring about 50 mils of vinegar. That I will pour into a flask a little bit later. If you're following along in the NeuLog guide, you can go to page 85 of the biology manual, and you will notice that there is this kit here where you have a container with a lid on it and a hose. You can set this up just the way it shows. The sodium bicarbonate goes into the chamber. You then cap it off. You run the hose into a water bath before you run the experiment, of course, and then you throw in your pH wand, and later you will add the vinegar to the top, of course, to begin the reaction. So I have a similar setup here. I don't actually have that kit, but what I do have is I have a flask, and this flask here I will throw in the sodium bicarbonate. I will then pour the vinegar in, and I will actually cap this off. Because I do not have that container. So I will throw a cap on here so that the gas that I create is forced to run into this chamber here where I have the hose actually running into. So we're going to begin actually by setting up our NeuLog instrumentation and making sure that we have this ready to go. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to calibrate our sensors so that now that we've had this in the water bath for some time, we're going to take our pH module here, and we're going to go ahead and actually open up our calibration page here. This is the module setup. I'm going to click on our scale here and set our pH to 7. I'm assuming that my distilled water here is healthy, and that's a pretty good assumption. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set our actual experiment. So I'm going to actually click on the second icon over here for online experiment. Now my graph opens up, and I'm going to click on the gears for experiment setup. And within this window now, I'm going to set, you'll notice that the lab, I think, says 5 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this for a few minutes. I'm going to say go ahead and run for 2 minutes, and 10 per second is the resolution. That's just superb. Okay, so my experiment is actually the prober is all set up and ready to go. The next thing I have to do is get my physical experiment ready, and I'm going to do that by taking our sodium bicarbonate, a couple spoons full, just 1 or 2, and dropping that into our flask. And now I'm actually ready to begin the reaction, and I'm going to do that by taking the 50 mils of vinegar that I've already pre-measured. I'm going to drop that in, and then remember I'm going to cork it off, but you won't have to if you actually have that acid rain formation kit. So last thing on my list before I begin is actually to say run experiment on the NeuLog. So I'm going to come over to NeuLog now, and I'm going to click on the green guy next to the graph, say run experiment. So my experiment is now running. I'm going to come over and I'm going to drop in my vinegar, and then I'm going to cap it off, and we will now see the formation of CO2 being released into the water. What I'm concerned about here is actually measuring the pH, and so as I click on zoom fit and look at my graph as this runs, I should see the pH drop over time. And so that's something that I'm going to do right now. I'm going to say zoom fit, and sure enough, so let me get an autofocus here. Sure enough, my pH is dropping over time. And you can allow this to run as long as you allow the experiment, you set the experiment up for. As the reaction begins to slow down, you'll notice that the formation of CO2 will become less prevalent. One of the things that you can do to get a little bit more out of this reaction is to shake up your container a little bit. And as you shake it up, you will begin that reaction for any sodium bicarbonate that actually hasn't had contact with vinegar. If you are working with the Dog's Cave kit, you can form CO2 ahead of time before you even actually run the experiment. And you can do that simply by taking a pop bottle. Here I have this guy. You can throw in your sodium bicarbonate with your vinegar. You can cap it off. Remember, it will become pressurized. Keep that in mind. But you can store this with that CO2 gas until you're actually ready to run your experiment with the Dog's Cave kit. So the same principle with the formation of CO2. And let's check out our graph. Now that the experiment is complete, if I say zoom fit again, we'll notice that my pH did drop significantly. So I went from a pH of 7 to now a little bit above 4.5. So we have definitely become acidic over the course of this experiment.